The coffee was still hot when my world collapsed. I remember that detail clearly. The way the ceramic mug burned my fingertips as I stood frozen in my kitchen, staring at the bank statement spread across the granite counter. The numbers didn't make sense. They couldn't make sense. $37,000. Gone. Just gone. My name was Emma Thompson, and until that Tuesday morning in October, I thought I knew exactly who I was. Careful person. A saver. Someone who checked her bank balance religiously and never spent money she didn't have. I worked as a data analyst for an insurance company, not glamorous but steady, predictable, safe. Everything my sister Rebecca wasn't. Rebecca. Even thinking her name made my chest tight. My older sister by 3 years, she'd always been the golden child in our family. Where I was methodical and quiet, she was charismatic and bold. Where I saved every penny, she lived like money was infinite. Our parents, immigrants from Taiwan who'd built their restaurant business from nothing, somehow never saw the red flags I'd been noticing since we were teenagers. The bank statement trembled in my hands as I traced the transactions with my finger. Small amounts at first, $200 here, $500 there. Then bigger ones. $2,000, $5,000. The dates went back 8 months. 8 months of systematic theft, and I'd never noticed because the amounts were always just small enough to slip under my radar. My phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca. Coffee later? I have exciting news about the expansion. The expansion. Rebecca had been talking about expanding her boutique marketing agency for months, always hinting that she was on the verge of landing some big client or securing a major investment. I'd been proud of her, actually. Finally, I thought she was building something substantial instead of jumping from one get-rich-quick scheme to another. Now, staring at my depleted savings account, I understood exactly how she'd been funding her expansion. I called the bank immediately. The customer service representative, a woman named Patricia with a tired voice, walked me through each transaction. Every single one had been authorized with my debit card and PIN. When I insisted I hadn't made these withdrawals, her tone became carefully neutral. Ma'am, these transactions were all made at ATMs where your card was physically present. The PIN was entered correctly each time. Are you absolutely certain you didn't make these withdrawals? I'm absolutely certain, I said, my voice shaking. Someone stole my card. When did you notice the card was missing? I looked at my wallet sitting on the counter. My debit card was right there, nestled between my driver's license and insurance card. It's not missing. I see. Patricia's paws stretched uncomfortably. Ma'am, have you given anyone access to your card or PIN? My throat went dry. Rebecca had been staying with me for 3 months, while her apartment was being renovated after a water leak. She'd seen me enter my PIN countless times at grocery stores, restaurants, the ATM outside our neighborhood bank. I'd never tried to hide it. She was my sister. You don't hide things from family. I need to file a fraud report, I whispered. Of course. I'll transfer you to our fraud department. The next hour was a blur of security questions, reference numbers, and promises that the bank would investigate. They'd freeze my accounts temporarily, issue new cards, and contact me within 5 business days. Meanwhile, I was left sitting in my kitchen, staring at the statement, trying to comprehend how the person I trusted most in the world had been systematically stealing from me. When Rebecca came home that evening, I was still at the kitchen table. The statement was folded neatly beside my laptop, which displayed a spreadsheet I'd created, color-coding each fraudulent transaction by date and amount. Green for under $500, yellow for $500 to $1,000, red for anything over $1,000. There was a lot of red. You look like someone died, Rebecca said, dropping her designer purse on the counter. She was wearing a new jacket I didn't recognize. Leather, expensive looking. Everything okay? I really looked at her maybe for the first time in months. Her highlights were fresh, professionally done. Her nails were perfectly manicured. The purse she just set down still had the tag attached. A Coach bag. $800 according to the dangling price tag. Where did you get the money for that? I asked, nodding toward the purse. Rebecca glanced down, then laughed. Oh, this? I told you business has been really good lately. I just signed a contract with a luxury hotel chain for their complete digital marketing overhaul. She pulled a bottle of wine from her purse, Another expensive purchase. We should celebrate. I wanted to believe her. God, how I wanted to believe her. But the numbers on my bank statement didn't lie, and the timeline was too perfect. Rebecca's sudden spending spree had started exactly when my money began disappearing. That's great, I said carefully. Which hotel chain? The Meridian Group. You probably haven't heard of them. They're based in Seattle, very boutique, very exclusive. She was already uncorking the wine, her back to me. They're paying me a 6-figure retainer. I opened my laptop and quickly searched for the Meridian Group. Nothing. No hotel chain by that name in Seattle or anywhere else. My stomach sank deeper. Rebecca, I said quietly, we need to talk. She turned around, wine glasses in hand, her smile faltering slightly. You're being weird, Emma. What's going on? I picked up the bank statement and unfolded it slowly. Someone has been stealing from my bank account. $37,000 over the past 8 months. Her face went perfectly blank. Not surprised, not shocked, just blank. It was the expression she'd worn as a child when our mother would catch her lying about broken dishes or missing homework. That's terrible, she said finally. Have you called the bank? Yes. They said all the transactions were made with my card and PIN. I kept my voice level, watching her face. Rebecca, you're the only person who knows my PIN. She set down the wine glasses with careful precision. Are you accusing me of stealing from you? I'm asking you directly. Did you take money from my account? The silence stretched between us like a canyon. Rebecca's jaw tightened, and for a moment, I saw something cold and calculating in her eyes that I'd never noticed before. I can't believe you would even ask me that, she said, her voice rising. I'm your sister, Emma. Your family. How could you think I would steal from you? Because someone did, and you're the only person with access. Maybe you forgot about the withdrawals. You've been stressed lately with work, maybe. I didn't forget $37,000, Rebecca. She picked up her purse, clutching it defensively. I don't have to listen to this. I'm being accused of theft by my own sister based on what? Paranoid speculation. Then show me your bank statements, I said. If you're innocent, show me where the money for your new clothes, your new purse, your expensive dinners came from. Show me evidence of this Meridian Group contract. Rebecca's face flushed red. I don't have to prove anything to you. The fact that you would demand to see my private financial information shows how little you trust me. She was deflecting, using my invasion of her privacy to avoid addressing the actual accusation. It was a tactic I'd seen her use with our parents dozens of times. Rebecca, please. Just tell me the truth. If you needed money, why didn't you ask? I would have helped you. For a second, her mask slipped. I saw something vulnerable and desperate in her expression. The little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who'd cry when the other kids at school called her weird for bringing homemade dumplings for lunch. But then it was gone, replaced by cold anger. You want the truth, she said. Fine. The truth is that you've always thought you were better than me. Miss Perfect with your stable job and your savings account and your careful little life. You sit here judging everyone else while never taking any risks or doing anything interesting. This isn't about. You want to know why I don't come to you for help? Because you make everything a lecture. You make me feel small and irresponsible and stupid. So yes, maybe I made some mistakes. Maybe I borrowed some money without asking. But I was going to pay you back. The admission hit me like a physical blow. Borrowed. I repeated. Rebecca, you stole from me. For 8 months. This isn't borrowing. This is theft. I was going to pay you back, she shouted. The hotel contract is real, Emma. I know it doesn't show up in your precious Google search because they're still building their online presence, but it's real. I was going to have the money to pay you back within the month. I stared at her, my heart breaking. Even now, caught red-handed, she was still lying. Still spinning stories. Still trying to manipulate me. Get out, I said quietly. What? Get out of my house. Tonight. Emma, come on. Don't be dramatic. We can work this out. You stole $37,000 from me, Rebecca. You violated my trust in the worst possible way. I want you out of my house tonight. She stood there for a moment and I thought she might cry. Might finally break down and tell me the real truth. Instead, she straightened her shoulders and picked up her wine glass, taking a long sip. Fine, she said. But when you realize you've destroyed our relationship over money, Emma, don't come crawling back to me. She left that night, taking her new clothes and her lies with her. I changed the locks the next day. The bank's investigation took 3 weeks. During that time I barely slept. I kept replaying conversations with Rebecca, looking for signs I'd missed. The way she'd always been vague about her business finances. How she'd started insisting on paying for expensive dinners to celebrate her success, right around the time the thefts began. The new wardrobe, the professional manicures, the sudden interest in luxury everything. All funded with my money. Money I'd saved working overtime, skipping vacations, buying generic groceries and cooking at home while she ate at trendy restaurants. When the bank finally called, the news wasn't good. Because the transactions had been made with my physical card and correct PIN. And because Rebecca had been an authorized guest in my home with ample opportunity to observe me entering my PIN, they couldn't definitively prove fraud. The bank would restore some of the money, about half, but the rest was considered my responsibility. We're sorry, Ms. Thompson, the fraud investigator explained. But our liability is limited when the cardholder's PIN has been compromised through personal negligence. Personal negligence. Trusting my sister was considered personal negligence. I hired a lawyer. Sarah Kim was a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who specialized in financial crimes. She listened to my story with professional sympathy, then delivered the hard truth. You could pursue criminal charges, she said. But prosecution would be difficult. Family financial abuse is notoriously hard to prove, especially when the perpetrator had legitimate access to your home and could claim the money was gifts or loans. What about civil court? Possible but expensive. Rebecca would have to have assets worth seizing, and from what you've told me, she's probably spent most of your money already. You might win a judgment, but collecting on it would be another matter entirely. I felt defeated, financially and emotionally drained. Rebecca had stolen not just my money, but my faith in my own judgment. How had I been so blind? That weekend, our parents invited me for dinner. I'd been dreading this moment, knowing I'd have to tell them what had happened. Mom and Dad had built their restaurant through decades of 18-hour days and careful saving. The idea of family members stealing from each other would horrify them. But when I arrived at their house, Rebecca was already there. She was sitting in the living room, tearfully explaining to our parents how I'd falsely accused her of theft and kicked her out over a misunderstanding. Mom was patting her hand sympathetically while Dad looked stern and disappointed. Emma, Dad said when he saw me. Rebecca told us what happened. How could you accuse your sister of such a terrible thing? I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. She told you what happened? That you became paranoid about some bank mistake and blamed her for it, Mom said, her voice hurt and confused. She said you demanded to see her private financial records and threatened to call the police. Rebecca sat there with red-rimmed eyes, looking like the victim. She'd beaten me here, controlled the narrative, painted herself as the wronged party. That's not what happened, I said quietly. Then tell us what did happen, Dad demanded. I looked at Rebecca, who was watching me with careful eyes. I realized this was a test. She was betting that I wouldn't destroy our family by telling our parents the truth. That I'd back down, let her version stand, and we'd all pretend this never happened. She was betting on my love for our family being stronger than my need for justice. For a moment I almost gave in. It would be easier, less painful. We could maintain the fiction that we were a loving, functional family where sisters didn't steal from each other. But then I thought about my empty savings account. About the years of careful budgeting and sacrifice that Rebecca had carelessly spent on designer clothes and expensive wine. About the way she'd looked me in the eye and lied, even after being caught. Rebecca stole $37,000 from my bank account over 8 months, I said clearly. She used my debit card and PIN to make withdrawals while she was staying at my house. When I confronted her, she admitted it but claimed she was going to pay me back. The room went completely silent. Dad's face drained of color. Mom's hand stopped moving on Rebecca's arm. That's not, Rebecca started, but Dad held up his hand. Is this true? He asked Rebecca directly. Rebecca's composure finally cracked. Her face crumpled and she started crying. Not the careful tears she'd been shedding before, but ugly, heaving sobs. I was desperate, she choked out. My business was failing and I had debts and I thought I could make it work and pay Emma back before she noticed. I never meant to hurt anyone. Mom stood up abruptly and walked out of the room. Dad sat in stunned silence, looking older than I'd ever seen him. How could you do this to your sister? He whispered finally. To your family? I don't know, Rebecca sobbed. I don't know. The aftermath was devastating. Rebecca moved back in with our parents temporarily, but the tension in the house was unbearable. Mom cried every time she looked at either of us. Dad threw himself into work, staying at the restaurant until midnight to avoid dealing with the situation at home. Rebecca started seeing a therapist and attending a support group for people with spending addictions. She got a part-time job at a local retail store and began making small monthly payments toward the money she owed me. $50 a month, which meant she'd have the debt paid off sometime around my 70th birthday. I moved across the country 6 months later. Portland seemed like a good place for a fresh start. Far enough from home that I wouldn't have to navigate the awkward family dinners and forced reconciliation attempts. My new life was quieter, lonelier, but honest. I made new friends who didn't know about my family drama. I dated a kind man named David who worked as a high school teacher and had never stolen anything more valuable than a pen. We moved in together after a year, and he never asked to know my bank PIN. Rebecca and I exchange Christmas cards now. Polite, distant things with pictures of my apartment and her new baby. She married a man she met in therapy. Another person trying to rebuild after financial mistakes. They send updates about their little house in the suburbs and their efforts to live within their means. I should probably forgive her. Everyone says so, my parents, my therapist, well-meaning friends who think family should always come first. They tell me that holding on to anger is only hurting myself. Maybe they're right. But forgiveness feels like giving up the last piece of protection I have. As long as I remember how easily she lied to me, how she used my love against me, I'll never be that vulnerable again. The truth is, I don't miss the sister who stole from me. But I do miss the sister I thought I had. The one who existed only in my imagination, who would never have taken my money, never would have betrayed my trust, never would have sat in our parents' living room and made me look like the villain in a story where I was the victim. That sister, the one I loved and trusted and would have done anything for. She never really existed at all. And that, more than the money, is what I'm still grieving. Sometimes late at night, when the Portland rain is drumming against my windows and David is sleeping peacefully beside me, I wonder what would have happened if I'd never seen that bank statement. How long would Rebecca have continued stealing from me? Would she have stopped on her own? Or would she have taken everything? I'll never know. And maybe that's for the best. The last time we spoke, really spoke, not just exchanged pleasantries at family gatherings, was 2 years ago. Rebecca called me on my birthday drunk and crying. I'm sorry, she said through her tears. Emma, I'm so sorry. I know I ruined everything between us. I know I hurt you in a way that can't be fixed. I sat in my kitchen, 3,000 miles away from the kitchen where I discovered her betrayal, and felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no relief. Just a vast emptiness where my love for her used to be. I know you are, I said quietly. Do you think there's any way we could try again? Start over. I looked out my window at the city lights of Portland, at the life I'd built without her in it. A good life. A safe life. An honest life. No, I said. I don't think there is. She hung up without saying goodbye, and we haven't spoken since. People ask me sometimes if I regret cutting ties with my sister, if I think I was too harsh, too unforgiving. They remind me that family is precious, that grudges are poisonous, that life is too short for permanent estrangement. But they weren't the ones who had to rebuild their life from scratch. They weren't the ones who had to learn to trust again after being betrayed by the person who was supposed to love them most. They weren't the ones who discovered that the person they thought they knew best was actually a stranger. I have a good life now. A life built on honesty and earned through my own work. My bank account belongs to me alone, and when I look at the balance, I know every dollar in it is mine. Rebecca gave me one gift, though she probably doesn't realize it. She taught me the difference between loving someone and letting them destroy you. She taught me that sometimes protecting yourself means disappointing people who think forgiveness should come easily. She taught me that trust, once broken, doesn't have to be repaired just because someone asks you to. And maybe in the end that lesson was worth $37,000. though I really wish I could have learned it another way.